Hi there. Today I want to talk to you about how large corporations use time travel to get an edge on all of the rest of us. And they do it without the means of any kind of time travel machine via any sort of occult means. The process I'm going to describe is entirely mundane, and all it usually takes is a calendar and some phone calls. But it is definitely a kind of time travel. It's very interesting when they get it wrong. So, the edge that I am talking about is that whenever a large media company releases a property, let's say a new Marvel movie, um, when that Marvel movie comes out, there are already many, many, many pieces of merchandise that are already on the shelves for that property before you even go see it. For instance, Quantumania. I'm sure that Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, you've seen toys for it before it was actually in theaters. I mean, you saw trailers, you saw more trailers, you saw promos, you saw people get interviewed on Stephen Colbert, Seth Meyers, or whatever. You saw some of those actors or film crew maybe do some stuff with some big YouTube personalities. And all of this happens right before the film comes out in a way to hype everybody up to go see the film. It takes a lot of coordination. For instance, just booking all of those sessions with YouTubers, you're going to have a media person, like an agent, there simply to just to get all of that done. And imagine all of the timing, like all of the timing for all of these bookings and interviews and everything has to be lined up perfectly in order to properly promote the movie. And there has been some discussion about, like, hey, did this movie fail because it was a streaming only and this movie got to be in theaters? Did this movie fail because of so and so thing? And a lot of times, what's really taking it down is the marketing. The marketing wasn't synced up with the release of whatever kind of story or project it was. And therefore, the marketing can't get people hyped up for exactly when the thing comes out, and they don't go see it whenever whatever company it is needs them to go see it. So, um, let's see. A really good example would be a lot of the stuff that came out during COVID and afterwards. So, 2020 and onwards, you were seeing a lot of movies get either delayed. I think some things honestly just got straight out canceled or made into other projects. And with those delays came a lot of consequences. So, when a new Harry Potter movie comes out, there's going to be a lot of merchandise for that Harry Potter movie. And that Harry Potter merchandise is not just going to be all the merchandise there was before. They're not just going to put a bunch of the same merchandise as before on shelves for the new Harry Potter movie. They're going to put new merchandise. And that merchandise has to be made ahead of time, in time for right before or during the movie release to hit the peak of the craze so that everybody profits the most. Merchandise is also an advertisement for your movie, and your movie is also an advertisement for your merchandise. And this can turn into an infinite money machine if you build it right and if you time things right. But if you don't time things right, then suddenly there's a lot of merchandise sitting on the shelves basically forever going unsold. This happened with Solo, the Han Solo backstory movie. I really enjoyed it. My husband really enjoyed it. It actually, like, it's a big thing for our relationship even, but we know it was a flop. And there's quite a lot of reasons why it was a flop, but one of the things going against it was that it experienced delays. And the delays in its release meant that when it did come out, the merchandise for it didn't come out at the right time. Or there was just a lot of it, and it was sort of strangely placed. Like, suddenly you were deluged with all of this Solo merchandise, but, like, It just didn't seem to really be aimed for when people were interested in Solo, and it didn't really seem to be aimed at the amount of interest there was going to be in Solo. They basically made more merchandise for Solo than they were going to sell because there wasn't a whole lot of interest for Solo. But the merchandise was ordered in a way that matched the projected expectations of interest, or so that. Sorry, it got kind of tangled up. Basically, they they ordered way more merchandise than they needed because the merchandise is ordered at the same time as the movie is ordered. They put in like orders and plans for merchandise, for vacation themed giveaways, for national media tie-ins, for all those interviews and stuff that I said. All that stuff gets lined up ahead of time. Well, if the movie gets delayed, then all of those appointments that you made to get interviewed, they get canceled, and you can try to move them around, but maybe they can't all move around. All of this scheduling is very delicate. And when it comes to the merchandise, let's say that, you know, they make 1,000,000 units of t-shirts. They make 1,000,000 t-shirts for the movie that's supposed to come out next year. Well, that movie gets delayed by 6 months. That means that they've got to keep those 1,000,000 t-shirts in inventory for 6 more months, and that costs money. That costs taxes. It costs, like, labor just to like keep it all up, and it also means that you're not making money off of those t-shirts that you're expecting to be making money off of 6 months ago to pay for something else. So the thing is, the edge that they have, this scheduling edge, usually positions them to where their properties are almost undefeatable. Whenever a new Avengers movie comes out, you can't avoid it. There's promotions everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's talking about it on the late shows. Everybody's talking about it on YouTube because all of those interviews and all of those specials have all been scheduled to coordinate right with the release of the movie. And whenever people don't get interested in a movie, you often see that that stuff wasn't scheduled as well. That stuff didn't come together as well. Eternals is a good example. I don't remember a lot of interest in Eternals. I don't remember a lot of people talking about who the heck is in Eternals, and I've never observed anybody have a conversation about characters in Eternals naturally. They've only talked about Eternals in the context of Eternals flopping, or like in the context of, why don't we talk about Eternals? What's the problem with Eternals? And that's because the interest in Eternals never truly developed. They got the timing wrong in their merchandising, marketing timing machine, and suddenly the interest wasn't there right when the movie was there, and the merchandise wasn't there at the right levels right when the movie was there at the right levels. Their placements were off, but most of all, their timing was off. And I mean, the pandemic in 2020 basically messed up everybody's timing. So what you've been seeing is what happens to these media companies when they don't get to have time travel. If you see them whenever the stuff that they usually have in place ahead of time doesn't get there ahead of time, suddenly they're on the same footing as everyone else, and they're mortal. They fail a lot. They get about average returns in the market, in the box office, and maybe even lower returns, because the thing is, these companies, they rely on time travel more than they rely on good content. Disney knows that if it times a blockbuster right to be there at Christmas for kids, with the right toys, with the right ads, it will always sell those tickets. Now, the complication of not being able to get people into theaters really threw things off, but now Disney's got streaming, so it can launch that at home if it needs. It's got a few different ways to work around these time travel problems, but Disney is always going to depend on time travel. It is always going to depend on being placed in time for you to happen to find it and get into it just at the right convenient time for it to sell a bunch of stuff to you. And because it depends on that, it doesn't really invest a lot into stories and characters and it doesn't really place the same emphasis on delivering on stories and on characters, on good writing, on actually good, impressive content, because it's already trying to rely on the cheat, and it's also spending so much effort keeping up with that time machine. For that time machine to work, you have to keep on putting out content, and it's okay if She-Hulk fails and like Andor gets sort of, there's I've seen some interest in Andor, but not a lot. I have heard that Obi-Wan, his series didn't do great. And a lot of it is like they're having trouble keeping interest with people. They don't have really great content, but they don't really, with the streaming stuff, they don't really have it coordinated. They don't have that time machine working. With movies and with home video releases, Disney can kind of turn it on and off. Turn on the spigot exactly when you need and turn it off exactly when they need. And with the streaming content, they're trying to keep this evergreen garden of stuff that you can always go to. Well, that throws all the timing off, doesn't it? That's, I think, why they've got these limited event things like Werewolf by Night was a Halloween special. I know they've got some Christmas specials now. They like buy up some Charlie Brown or something, Garfield. And so everybody will watch those holiday specials when they come out because they can't watch them any other time of the year, or because people tend to watch seasonal stuff when the season is there. Again, time travel. They need to depend on people showing up at a certain time, spending a bunch of money, getting interested in a certain thing, and what they get interested in, it just so happens there will be a lot of merchandise of around exactly at the time that they just got interested in it. And that is the magic spell. That is the Disney magic. It's the magic of Universal Studios. It's the magic of Columbia, whatever. All of them do this. If they're not doing it right now, then they're trying to do it in the future. And if they're not doing it well right now, they're trying to do it well, like, every time they do it. Because it's the money machine. It's kind of like the elimination of choice in the market. If people are completely inundated with the same stuff, and the alternatives can't really get in front of them because you've taken up all of the space in the room, then of course you're going to succeed against your competitors each time you come out with something. Unless it's the Solo movie. That didn't do so well. The timing was off. So I think it'll be interesting to watch these companies in the future, because I think that we're going to see more and more of these mistakes be made. I think that the shape of the world's changed quite a bit since Disney first set up these systems and this whole content chain that it's got going. And so I think that it's far too dependent on what I've been calling time travel, and I know is scheduling. It's a kind of interwoven scheduling, though. It's really interesting scheduling when not only have you been planning this animated feature 4 years ahead of time, but you've also been planning its T-shirts with the T-shirt company about 3 years ahead of time. That's that's just the T-shirts. I mean, you're coordinating with all of these different other companies, and you're getting them to do things on your timeline, so that whenever you come out with your thing, it seems like the whole world is synced up with you, and that everybody is paying attention to this, and that everybody thinks it's important. It's kind of an illusion, and like I said, it's produced by this manipulation of timing. Now, you have to be a really big company to be able to do all that, to have all of that staff, to have all of those resources to devote to that, and most people really can't do that. Most people, they're just trying to get attention on their thing when it happens, and maybe sell a couple of T-shirts while they're at it, but it's really hard to pull off the kind of thing that the big companies do, where it sort of not just presents you with the right choice at the right time, but also removes a bunch of other choices from the table right whenever you're making that choice, so that you always make this mainstream choice. It's not really something that independents can do from the ground level. And that's why I'm glad that it's been failing. I'm glad that Disney has been failing. I'm glad that they have had trouble putting out that many Marvel movies into the market at once. I'm glad that they have delays with their productions that mess up their merchandise, and I loved Solo, but I'm glad it failed. I think Disney needs to fail a lot. I think Columbia and let's see, Fox doesn't exist anymore, right? But Warner Brothers does. Or I'm starting to lose track of how many studios we got left. So I'm just gonna call it all Disney. You know, I hope Disney fails so it learns to stop using time travel and start just playing on the regular court with the rest of us mortals. And then it can start making good content regularly, and people will just get the content because they like it instead of because it's on every Happy Meal and every soda machine and every billboard for the last 2 months. So how could you possibly ignore it? Um, I'm glad that their time machine is breaking down. I'm sad that some things have failed that I wish would have succeeded, but I think that these media companies need to learn how to make content instead of how to use a calendar. People are very interested in new content. They're not really interested in being played for years. And I think that's just proving out in the market. You're seeing it. Um, so, yeah, exciting stuff. Um, Sorry that there's not something more extraordinary when it comes to the time machine stuff and the time travel stuff, but sometimes all it takes to do effective time travel is to just use a calendar and coordinate with someone else.